Hello, my name is Nicolás Fermín, and I'm going to expose you about the conditional sentence on clauses. So, kicking off, what is a conditional? A conditional are statements that describe both hypothetical and real scenarios. Conditionals allow you to go far beyond the limitations of certain English tenses. So, when we talk about a conditional, we're talking about a group of sentence of clauses when one puts a condition to the other to happen. Either it's going the past, present, or future. So the conditional help us to identify hypothetical situations like those that are unreal, events that are likely to happen in the future that we are not 100% sure, but we think that they can happen, events that are unlikely to happen in the future. We can use it to talk about something that are more or less possible to happen. General truths or habits and impossible scenarios. All of these uses are going to be they're going to depend on the type of the conditional. But first, talking about the conditional clause, is a type of adverbial clause that combined with a main clause create the conditional sentence. So this is what I was saying. A conditional clause plus a main clause makes a conditional sentence because the condition by itself doesn't tells us much information. But when you add the main clause, that is when you create a compound sentence. So a conditional clause may be put either at the beginning or end of a sentence. Going further, we're going to set a standard of the structure, but like I'm saying here, it can be changed. A conditional clause is most often introduced by the subordinate conjunction if. This is the most of the case, but we can also have some conditional subordinates like unless, even if, provided that, on condition of that, as long as in the case of. There are many of them. We're going to see a bunch of them in the examples. But first, we have four types of conditional sentence, and they're going to depend of which of those are most likely to happen or less likely to happen. Either if are some general truths or impossible situations. The zero conditional expresses something that is considered to be a universal truth, or when one action always follows the another. So when we are really sure or where something that is actually true, we use the zero conditional. And the structure is we use the subordinator if or when, it doesn't change anything of the meaning, and then the present tense. This is the conditional clause, but the main clause has to be in present tense. So it can be a zero conditional. In these examples, we have positive sentence. If we go out with friends, we normally go to a restaurant. So going to the restaurant is only going to happen or happens always that those persons go out. So the condition is going out, and that makes that 100% sure they go to restaurant because that's their habit. In a negative sentence, if I'm tired, I don't go to gym. In this case, we're talking about a condition that it happens, it forbids the other to going through. Affirmative question: if I eat this, I put on weight. We see here that for asking, due to the structure, we don't really need to change like too much because the main clause actually remains exactly like it is. And then in the general question, if the temperature is increased, for how long does the chicken remain until it gets running? We see here a little bit more complex sentence, but it can put us in a more descriptive example of the zero conditional. We're talking about because we know that after some time in really heat temperatures, the chicken it uh, eventually gets rotten. So we're asking for when. What is if the temperature decreasing, how for how long does the chicken remain? Then we have the first conditional. We use this to talk about things in the future that are likely to happen or have a real possibility of happening. Um, so in the first conditional, we're not 100% sure, but those things are likely to happen. We see here that the structure is the subordinator plus the present tense, but the main clause uses a auxiliary verb will or a modal verb such as might, may, might, can, could, should, and in infinitive. In these examples, positive sentence. If you start thinking about this game, it will drive you crazy. This is not 100% sure, but we're assuming that that is really likely to happen. So this is why we use this structure. This is something that is happening now that is likely to change the future. And then this negative sentence. Unless you hurry up, you won't catch the bus. We see here two negations because the condition is going to into a negative form and the main clause it's also in a negative form. So we can see also when something doesn't happen, that makes that the other thing doesn't happen either. Affirmative question. If you're asked to put in overtime this week, will you do it? The same case. And the general question. As soon as you get a raise, what will you do with the extra money? We see here how the that connector as soon as doesn't change the meaning at all. That's why the conditional clauses actually are have like a really wide range of options so we can express the way that we need. The second conditional, it is used to talk about improbable or impossible situations in the present or future. So in this case we have two structures that depends on this case in the conditional clause. It can be in past subjunctive or in simple past, as we see here in the presentation. But the main clause always is going to be in the modal verb would, might, could, or could that are the ones that expresses the possibility of something to happen, and the verb infinitive either if it is simple or continuous. In this case, the positive sentence. If you really wanted to be on Malibu Beach, you will be there. This is something about the past. That person wanting to be in Malibu Beach is in the past, but the action that is going to get the consequence of that condition is happening in the present. It can also be in the future. In this case, it's in the present. The negative sentence. You will have to walk everywhere if you bought a bike. The condition is one of the back. That action cannot be changed because we're talking about the past. That's why we say that it's really impossible of that condition to actually happen. The negative question. In this case, we are putting an example to see uh, how it's the behavior of the conditional clause when we add a negative question. If you didn't have your current job, do you think you might be working still? In this case, the negation is directly in the clause. And the general question, if you had $1 million to invest, how would you invest it? The same, a condition of the past that could have changed the present or the future. Finally, the third conditional. The third conditional expresses an unreal situation in the past with reference to the hypothetical outcome that will result also in the past. So, condition in the past and consequence in the past. So, the structure is the subordination if and then past perfect subjunctive. That is the conditional clause. But always the main clause have a would modal verb or could or might and perfect infinitive. But instead of the past perfect subjunctive in the conditional clause, we can have a past perfect. They both work for the same. That is going to depend on the context or what the person needs to express. Finalizing with the examples. Positive sentence. If you had seen the movie, we could have talked about the ending. So watching the movie is something that happened in the past, and then the eventual talking is also setting in the past. This native sentence, I would have resigned if they had made the decision by themselves. In this case, we use the second structure that we talked about earlier. And in the negative question, if you didn't have your current job, do you think you might be working still? So the third conditional actually help us to express those things that to like that's the exactly meaning of the expression what if, talking about some conditions that are not going to happen, and even if they had, they don't even change the present or the future because the consequence we are going to only find it in the past. um, so that will be the presentation. Overall, the conditional clauses and the conditional sentence help us to expand the limitations of the English grammar, of the English language, because they can help us to kind of set us in on real situation, hypothetical situations that can help us to express more things that you think that actually happen, are happening, or are going to happen. So thanks for watching the presentation. I hope you enjoyed. Goodbye.